then we've already handed them their lawsuit on a silver platter. Because they have to be able to show that we failed to meet the standard of care in some way, and that failure is what caused the outcome to the patient. So, as much as we all hate to read policies, they truly are important, and we really need your input. If you do read one and you see that it's just crazy the way it's written, please let us know so that we can get something fixed. I'm just going to talk real quickly about HIPAA. We've had a lot of situations, unfortunately, with HIPAA breaches. And I want to stress to you the part of HIPAA that talks about minimum necessary, which means by law, you are only allowed to review as much of the medical record as you need to be able to do your job. So, for example, if I work in pre-op and I'm assigned to the patient in bed A and B, but I'm not assigned to the patient in bed C, but I know them and I'm so concerned about what's going on for them. If I go into their medical record, I'm in breach of HIPAA. I don't have any legal ability or allowance to go into that patient's chart. They're not assigned to me. So the same with if you have a family member, you find out they're coming into the emergency room while you're on duty and you're thinking, oh my God, they've got this problem and I hope they know. Let me check and make sure that they're realizing that my loved one has this issue, and I'll check the record. You've just breached HIPAA. You do not have the right to access another patient's medical record, even a family member, and actually not even our own records. If we come in for lab work in the morning and by the afternoon we're wondering, am I going to get chewed out by my doctor for my cholesterol? Do not go in their chart and look up your lab results. You've got to go to medical records, fill out the form, they'll give you it for free, or go onto your portal. If you have your access set up as a portal, go into your portal, but do not go into Cerner and look. The other caveat that we've just had an issue with in a different department was a coworker came in to be seen. They had to go through their department to get seen. And of course, the other staff in the department who had nothing to do with what they needed to have done for medical care, were not part of the medical care, were not part of any of the tests or anything that was done, came to realize they were in the emergency room being seen and started talking throughout the department. Oh, did you see so-and-so was here and blah, 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 blah. That is a breach of HIPAA, because if you learn about somebody's medical care through your job, then you have no right to go and discuss it with anybody. If you happen to be walking down the hall and you run into that coworker and they say to you, oh yeah, I'm here because I'm having this and this and this done, you should be cognizant and say, well, do you mind if I let the rest of the team know you're here so that we can all say a prayer for you? Yeah, sure, no problem at all, go ahead. Now you've learned through their interaction with that person they've given you permission. Now you can discuss it. But if you learn about a person's being here for any kind of medical care through your job, you happen to see their name on a tracker board, or you just happen to notice the chart on the table and you notice their name is on the chart. Well, now you've learned about this through your job, and you need to seal your lips and not discuss it with anybody. Does that make sense? Does anybody have any questions whatsoever? Okay. That's about it. Yes?
Do we contact you if we notice an issue with a policy?
You can,
Okay.
or you can contact Courtney or anybody in your one-up, your educator, anybody. But yes, you can send an email to me if you want, that's fine.
Okay.
The one thing I will touch on, and before we can get out of this sauna, for employee events, employee injuries, so you're doing surgery and somebody gets stuck with a needle. If they're an employee employee, please don't go in through the medical record. Once you're in Cerner and you're in that patient's chart and you go to the link to Origami through the medical record, it automatically is a patient event. If you are needing to file an employee injury, it doesn't come to me. Thank God I do not do workers' comp. Thank God. It needs to go to employee health. The only way it can get there, because employee health can't see any of the Origamis that come to me, which are patient, visitor, physician, all of those kinds of things come to me. They can't see any of mine, and I can't see any employee injury reports, nor do I want to. So you have to go out to the AHRQ webpage. And down the side, you'll see the quick links, and you'll see one specifically says employee injury. And you've got to go through there to fill out an employee injury. Otherwise, it has to get all redone. Because if you put it through a patient event, it doesn't go to employee health. It has to all be redone. If there's a visitor event, it's the same thing. You have to go out to the AHRQ page, and you'll see that there's a link that says patient, visitor, other. You need to pick that link and pick then patient, visitor on the next bar that you'll see when you open that next link up. You'll have a link for visitor, and you need to fill it out through there. Same way if you've got a physician who is at the nurse's station, ranting, raving, screaming, all that. No, it never happens, but let's pretend. And you want to report the behavior? I want you to report the behavior. Please report the behavior every time. You go to the AHRQ page again, because there's no patient anywhere inside or involved. There's nothing to do with the patient. Go to the AHRQ page, pick the patient, visitor, other. It'll open up. You can pick physician, and then fill out the behavior and tell me the details of what they said, who it was. Don't report physician behavior. You're not going to tell me who the physician is. I can't do a whole lot. But tell me exactly what was going on. Even share with us how it made you feel. Did you feel threatened, intimidated, scared? Were you concerned? What was going on? Tell us the whole thing. And the Med Staff office, Dr. Rosequist is actually very, very supportive. He's one of the best CMOs I've ever worked with. And he does call physicians to his office to have little sit-downs about their behavior. So things do happen. It may not seem like it to you because you know surgeons as well as us. It's not exactly one conversation and they turn into Pollyanna. But if you report it every time, then we can do more with it. Because if we see this is a one-time thing, and they're just having a bad day, and their patient's bleeding out, and so they're screaming, well, we've got to give them a little grace. But if they're just being gluteus, then tell us. I mean, because it's not acceptable. If you look on your paycheck, there is not a section for abuse pay. Really, go look. Everybody has the right to come to work and not be threatened, abused. We have rules about incivility. We have the right to come to work and have a pleasant, safe, non-intimidating, non-bullying day. So if you're exhibiting that with somebody that's coming in and doing it, no matter who it is, fill it out and let us know. We can't fix it if we don't know about it. And don't fill out one report and say this doctor's done this 10 times. If I don't have 9 previous events, I'm not going to be able to go with a 10-time occurrence. I'm going to have to go with this is 1. And now if I get more, we have more. But I've been at facilities where they've even made physicians go to anger management because they've seen a trend. It does happen. Yes?
Do doctors know who filled out that report?
No, and I'm glad you brought that up. Thank you. I am the only person in this entire facility that has access to see who filled out an origami. Your leader does not even have access to see it. The CNO does not even have access to see it. The CEO does not even have access to see it. And I do not give out names. I don't care who asks, they're not getting a name. Physicians don't even have access to see an origami. There may be discussed about an event with a patient and a fin, but they don't even have access to see an origami. Yes?
So I actually just filled out a employee incident on the patient's record. Will that just come off, or?
Was that this morning?
It was last night.
Yes,
It probably
okay.
came through this morning.
Yeah, I saw that. Yeah, the employee's going to have to go back in and fill out an employee injury report.
So the employee will do it, I won't do it.
Either one.
Okay.
That's a
Yeah,
good point. I
either one.
wanted to bring up that anybody can put it in an origami. It doesn't
Yeah.
just have to be the nurse. That's the big misconception is, oh, it's just the nurse that needs to do the wristmaster.
Yeah.
Anybody can put it on because of the fact that you can do it in Cerner, but you can also do it on the ARC.
Yes.
If you're injured, if you get stuck,
Right.
you can put your own, you should put your own.
You
origami.
should put your own in.
Because they ask you personal questions.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Yeah, you really should put your own in if it's an employee injury. But yes, anybody can fill one out. Go ahead.
Oh, well, this is another thing. So this has happened twice now in pre-op for me. We had a procedure, it was a shoulder scope, rotator cuff repair, supracranial decompression, like all of that stuff. And on the consent, all it said was shoulder scope and indicated procedures. But yet on the H&P in the order, it was all written out as that.
Yeah.
And I was told that indicated covers all of that stuff. So, and then also I had another
Potentially it
incident
could,
with possible, where I
but-
was told the word possible doesn't have to be on it either.
No. The surgeon, I'm trying to get through to the surgeons, they want their consent to be as inclusive as they possibly can. The last thing you want is a patient to come back and have grounds to say, you never told me you were doing that to me. And if that is not written on the consent, they have no grounds to prove they weren't informed. So while all other indicated procedures, the real intent of that in a consent form is to cover a surgeon if they get in to do a bowel resection and they just happen to notice that the appendix is looking pretty inflamed and nasty and they didn't know ahead of time. Well, now they've got grounds to take the appendix. Typically, if they go in to do some other kind of surgery, but the appendix is perfectly healthy, just because they're in the neighborhood doesn't mean they're entitled to lop out every other little appendage they want to take just because they're in the neighborhood. So there is a limit to what that any other indicated procedures will cover them for. And it's to the surgeon's best interest. I just had a long conversation about this with one particular surgeon, and I think the light bulb finally went on. We'll see. But the more inclusive they make that surgical consent, the more they reduce the chance that patient can come back and say, you never informed me. And remember, surgical consent is about informed consent. It's the same with complications. I keep trying to get these surgeons to understand, if you're going to do a particular surgery, our surgical consents are very generic, and I can't stand them. I'm trying to get corporate to listen, but they won't. We have certain complications that are listed, like your typical bleeding, damage to an adjacent organ, your little normal things. But I'm trying to get the physicians to understand that if they're going to do a certain procedure and they know for this particular patient, for this particular procedure, something else is a real possibility for a complication, they need to write it in. Because that way, if it happens, they can prove that they told the patient losing your toe from having your appendix done was a real possible complication. It's right there, you signed it. So if they don't do that, then they lose the ability to really prove that they told a patient ahead of time of these strange kind of complications that are not listed. So it should be more inclusive. If there's a whole stream of things in the H&P that are written, but they're not putting it into the consent, they really should be. Yes?
So, what if, just saying, what if the surgeon's being complicated and they don't want to do it? You're saying should be. So is
Well-
it has to be, or that it should be?
Well,
Because like, you're saying that liability falls on the
ultimately,
doctor.
ultimately, yes. The liability is the surgeon's. So I would kind of look at it from what exactly is in their H&P that's missing from the consent. I mean, there's some things that are almost inherent to the original procedure. So is this one of those things that it's really not that big of a deal because you can't do this procedure without doing this? That would be one thing. But if they've listed hysterectomy, but salpingo-oophorectomy is in the H&P, but it's not on the consent, I would absolutely have a problem. So kind of look at what's there versus what's missing and think it over, and if it's really going to be a significant impact, that, no, you're talking here about doing something totally different and new in addition to what's here, then I would say, no, doc, come on. What's your problem with just redoing the consent? What's the big deal? It can take 2 seconds. I mean, it's crazy.
Yeah.
Oh, I know.
Always a deal.
Yeah, I know. And if they start really getting onto you, again, call me or do an origami, let me know. Get Courtney to come over and get involved. She's getting the big bucks. Let her take it up. Call her, say, hey, chief, get over here. And then do an origami and let me know what's going on, and I'll take it through the medical staff and make the medical staff, their peers, make a decision and say yes or no. But these surgeons are really putting themselves out on a ledge for a lot more potential liability than what they need to do if they would just do the consent inclusive of everything, even the possible items. If they just list them, there's no harm if you don't do it. It's not like you've listed something as a possible and you didn't do it, so by God, we're gonna sue you. Nobody's gonna do that. So, but they might if you do something that you didn't list. So, and yes,
Just one more question. In regards to the injuries, I've had surgeons that have injured themselves during procedures that I don't want to report it. They immediately, I don't care, I'm fine, just give me another glove, and they want to keep going. How, but I feel like it should be reported.
you can go ahead and report it. If they don't wanna get care, then we close it down. I'm not gonna chase them around the building trying to put a Band-Aid on them.
Yeah.
So,
I say, if we, because, or sometimes they say, well, you have to do a risk master in regards to that. Does that go in under the employee file? Or?
it goes under the patient, because the physicians are not employees that have to mandatory go through employee health. So you can put it under the patient event, and list that it was Dr. such and such that stuck his finger with a needle, was re-gloved, and we move on. So, yes.
On that topic right there, though, with the patient potentially at risk,
That's why I'm